Good evening. You're listening to Grown and Dating on Real Women Radio. This is TJ.
This is V. We got heavy conversations today. Heavy conversations. But first, how was your weekend?
Oh, my weekend was great. I got to hang out with Sean, so, you know.
Oh, that's right. Sean Jones. His show was this past weekend at Fort Walton Beach, Florida.
Yeah.
At the event room. Shout out to PHP Entertainment, Q La La Productions for putting this thing on. And
it was sold out crowd.
Sold out crowd. It was a good
Sean
crowd.
showed out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I love them red shoes. You need to get you some red shoes.
Yeah, I can't do it. He can do it, but I can't do it.
He did it. He did it well.
I can't do it. But yeah, we got some guests in the building today too.
Well, we're gonna get to that in a little bit. Right now, we're going to talk about our topic for the week.
Keep me on point.
That's what a good woman does.
Okay, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me talk about the topic.
Okay.
It says, according to the National Coalition Against domestic violence is a willful intimidation, physical assault, battery, sexual assault, and or abusive behavior as part of a systematic pattern of power and control perpetrated by one intimate partner against another. It includes physical violence, sexual violence, psychological violence, and emotional abuse. This evening we'll be speaking with spoken word poet and artist, actress, and playwright Leana McNeil and therapist Dr. Keya Wiggins. All right, if you'd like to join our discussion, you can give us a call at 850-332-3303 or send us a message on Facebook at Grown and Dating.
And we'll also take a text in case you're worried about somebody recognizing your voice, because we want you to be safe out there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So before we get into the show, we're going to play a little music to sort of get this evening started, and we're going to come back with comedian.
Oh yeah, Sean Jones. He got some stuff to say about this. Some stuff to say about it. Right.
Okay, so Sean, I have V here with us.
What's going on, man?
Hey, what's up, Big D?
Ain't nothing, man. Did you eat something after the show last week?
Yeah, some cold chicken I had in the room, I think. They gave me some food at the show, so that was good. Yeah, they gave me some food. They took care.
Yeah, they hooked me up a little. They gave me a big plate.
Exactly. You know, black people, we have to get that high blood pressure scare every time before we eat, or we ain't eating good. So they made sure they get a little high blood pressure scare. You know. So it was good. It was good food.
She gave
Definitely good food.
Oh, well, I got chicken and meatballs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Chicken
Oh, yeah. Nice little combo.
Yeah.
Enough to strip up for the bathroom.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Sean, we know you got to go and get you a bite, because I know you got lots to do this week. Our topic is Black and Blue When Love Hurts. We have a therapist who's coming on, and we have this lady who was abused, and she has written a play. So however you want to talk about our subject, we'll be happy as can be.
Domestic violence. I kind of misread it when I first saw it, but it's about domestic violence. I don't know if you have any domestic violence jokes.
There ain't nothing funny about getting beat.
You know that's right.
I mean, even playing grip ball ain't funny. We make a joke.
Say what?
I said, even playing grip ball isn't funny.
Yeah, you can't. It's a fine line to walk when you talking about a woman getting hit on. But the old joke is, what do you say to a woman with two black eyes?
You done already said.
Now I told you.
Yeah.
Now I told you one.
Well, really, in our research, men are getting beat up almost as much as women now.
I know enough about me, though.
Oh, I got a friend who got beat up like that. He was about 5'3", and his wife was like 5'7", and she She used to wear him out.
That's horrible.
And when she finished beating his ass, she put him right back on the trophy mantle with all the rest of the trophies. And you sit your little self there until I tell you to get there. Because the brother at 5'3", he should. That's a Cat Williams fight right there.
Yeah. Yeah, he drove a Yukon Denali.
Oh, wow. He had little man.
He had to hop out of that thing.
Gosh, it's the one that he didn't break.
That's funny. Literally. Your boy's Webster then, huh?
Yeah. The sad part is, man, we were in a conference call, and he called in. And right when he was talking, his wife decided she was going to start hitting on him. And it was just nothing but commotion. And he was like, "Oh, let me call you back." It was like, "Oh man, he getting his ass whooped right now."
Hey nigga, like you ain't gotta call me back. You might just want to go ahead and call 911 because I can't do nothing for you.
God.
Yeah, feel bad for that dude.
You ain't right. You supposed to be helping your. You up there with the video camera talking about world star.
For real, it's like, how you gonna get? Anyway, yeah, he got a raw that day.
Wow. When I date short guys, I'm very kind to them.
Kind.
Yeah.
Okay. You talking about your dating habits, huh? I thought we were talking about $1,000. Now we're on your date line.
I'm just saying, you got to be kind to the short guy. He got enough issues.
Yeah. Short guy can do a lot. Never mind. We ain't gonna go there today.
That's another show.
If the girl tall enough, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Ain't nothing wrong with dancing with a little small fella.
Nestling.
Oh my God.
That's funny.
That's funny.
There. Yeah, man. It's like you said, a lot of people don't even realize how much domestic violence go on with the actual man being the victim. And I think a lot of men don't say anything about it simply because of the fact that, one, nobody's going to believe them. Number two, we just feel humiliated. You know what I mean? But, excuse the expression. There's some big bitches out there that can throw a left hook. So don't be afraid to step forward.
Yeah, I met a couple thugs.
Right. When you got a woman named Meet, 9 chances out of 10, she gonna knock your ass out once, twice a month.
Oh my
so
God.
be prepared.
It is so funny that you said that. It is so funny that you said that because I met a girl.
You date Meet?
I met a girl
You date Meet?
and she has a reputation of beating dudes up in high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
She fine
Put it
now,
this way.
but she still got that rep.
Yeah. Put it this way. If you with a woman that got the same name twice, like Nene, Nene, Meet, Boo Boo, that bitch gonna punch you. I'm telling you.
She gonna close.
Gonna punch.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
She gonna punch you.
That's funny that you said that. Cause her face popped into my head when you said that. I was like, yeah, that girl was a thug.
Ain't nothing like a thug with a thong.
Thug with a thug.
So I don't know if we can use any of this, Sean.
We can't. I'm sorry. I was just free flowing. You can say thug with a thong.
Oh, absolutely. I'm concerned about how we present you. I'll use all of it.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. I'm here to talk about the issues as well as make fun of it. The thing is, anything in life and everything in life meant to be made fun of. So if you don't have a sense of humor, you can't enjoy life.
Right.
You can't enjoy the different facets of life. So if people can't take what I'm saying, hey, so be it. Maybe the type of person, the comedy that I have, maybe it's not for you. I mean, it just I'm not trying to take domestic violence lightly or make it seem like something funny.
Right.
But at the same time, you want to bring attention to it, but you want it to be an interesting topic that people want to talk about it and not feel so depressed while doing so.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
that's all. So you tell Meet Me if she got something to say, bring her ass.
Oh, I'm pretty sure if Mimi hears this show, she's probably gonna come looking for me.
Yeah, she knows me.
All I can say to you is stay to her left. That's her weaker hand.
Just keep moving.
Just keep moving.
They can move.
I might have to get the restraining order now. I might have to tell the cops it ain't happened yet, but it's fitting to. It's about to.
Right. Exactly.
Even in the South of minutes, it's fitting to.
I know. My
yeah, did you hear that? It came out, then they gonna try to retract it. Now we heard you fitting too.
Yeah, my friends in DC are gonna be like, "What in the world is going on with him?"
Exactly. You fit into a country category. That's what you fit into.
Right.
Saying that.
I'm now officially Southern. Good gracious.
Yeah. You go to the store with just a pair of jeans on and nothing else, because you fit into.
I seen that too, which is the funny part. I seen that.
That's the normal wardrobe right there, bro.
That's why they got the signs.
The what?
No shirt, no shoes, no service.
Oh, it's because of people from the South.
I said that's why they have the signs: no shirt, no shoes, no service.
Right. Well, let me tell you something. The sign that says that is no good because, I'm going to put it out there. Most of the people that come towards a store, an establishment, a business establishment with no shirt, no shoes, they can't read that damn sign. So it ain't doing them no good.
They also ain't got no money.
They need to have a picture with a foot crossed out, with a shoe on it, with a bare shirt, with a bare chest, with a cross across it, because somebody ain't gonna read that sign and say, I don't even know what those words mean.
Yep, and just walk up in there.
Oh my gosh!
And just walk up in there. Mess the whole place up.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just my input on everything.
Right.
We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, man. I love being on with you guys. I'm sorry I've been so busy. I'm out here in Vegas right now trying to leave my mark. So,
I'm excited for you.
Well, thank you so kindly.
And where you going to be at in Vegas?
I'm at the MGM Grand at Brad Garrett's Comedy Club inside the MGM.
Okay.
So that's it. Yeah, our first night was last night, so we're doing shows every night this week. So if anybody in Vegas, come check your boy out.
Okay. Absolutely. One day we'll be balling like that. We'll be like, let's go catch Sean this weekend.
I know, right?
I'm balling. Yeah, I'm balling. That's why I'm trying to look for a food delivery place to eat at.
I heard that.
Well, good luck with your search.
Thank you, and tell meet me. What's up? Thanks for that.
Thank you, Sean. You have a great week.
You too, guys.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right, peace.
Later.
You are listening to Grown and Dating on Real Women Radio with V
and TJ. Right now, we're going to go on into our topic. Black and blue, when love hurts. The first thing we're going to talk about are a couple of items that are in the news, V. The first item, after the massacre in Orlando, there was an article in Rolling Stone by journalist Sororia Chimley. I'm sorry, because I know I'm mutilating your name.
Sororia Kamali.
Thank you. The Washington Post reported Monday that although family members said Omar Mateen had expressed anger about homosexuality, the shooter had no record of previous hate crimes. But that depends on how you categorize domestic violence. Mateen's ex-wife,
Satora Yousafzai.
We make good partnership, V. Thank you. Has come forward to describe how Mateen beat her and held her hostage. His ex-wife also, Think Progress reports that between 2009 and 2012, 40% of mass shootings started with a shooter targeting his girlfriend, wife, or ex-wife. Just this month in California, a shooter targeted a UCLA doctoral student, gunned down his professor, prompting a lockdown on campus. But first...
Wow, he killed his estranged wife in Minnesota. He climbed through a window, killed her in her home. Wow, last year alone, nearly a third of mass shooting deaths were related in some way to domestic violence. Wow. Okay, her recent article in Rolling Stone is called In Orlando as Unusual Domestic Violence Was Ignored, Red Flag. That's crazy. Wow, we share this article with you just to remind all of us that the reach of domestic violence is far and is a problem for all of us.
Now, the second part we have pertains to this, and also is something that the SCOTUS, Supreme Court of the United States, did just yesterday. And some people are kind of upset with Clarence Thomas because, you know, he finally talked. He had a question. He's known for being mute during all these different discussions. And people are saying that he is arguing for domestic abusers to have easier access to guns. So on Monday, in the case of Voisning versus the United States Supreme Court handed down a decision prohibiting people convicted of domestic violence from purchasing guns in a 6-2 vote, according to the SCOTUS blog. And we follow them on Twitter. Their direct quote is, SCOTUS holds that domestic violence conviction is misdemeanor crime of violence for purposes of limiting access to firearms.
Wait, so Clarence Thomas was against that?
Yeah. He finally speaks, and that's what he does with his voice.
Wait, when was the last time he actually said something?
I think they said this was like the first time in 10 years that he has actually been a part of the discussion during deliberations.
Wait, so he was just sitting there chilling for 10 years.
And getting a check. Let's do that,
V. In a row for 10 years.
Yeah.
Just chilling. Just, you know what, I'm good.
Yeah.
And then he finally says something, and it's kind of, wow.
These abusers need access to guns. I'm sure he has access to the same stats that we have access to that show when a weapon is in the home, the presence of a gun in domestic violence situation increases the risk of homicide by 500%. And I know I jumped a little ahead with just the facts because we have like 5 facts about this whole issue, but I thought it was a good tie-in just to drive home how absurd he is on this issue.
Wow, Clarence. Wow. And I know our guest, she got this look on her face right now, like she really wants to say something.
So we got just a few more seconds. If you can hold on, sister, we're going to bring you in this conversation.
She ready.
We have the fabulous Lena McNeil that we're talking about. We're going to bring her on in just a moment. But first, V and I are going to go through our facts. And since I already did number 5, V, I'll let you go back and start with 1.
Okay. It says on average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. During 1 year, this equates to more than 10 million women and men.
1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have been victims of some form of physical violence by an intimate partner within their lifetime.
Wow. 1 in 5 women and 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime.
These stats make me so sad. Everybody knows someone. That's the point of it. Whether they're admitting it or not, everybody knows someone. Our last stat is 1 in 7 women and 1 in 18 men have been stalked by an intimate partner during their lifetime to the point in which they felt very fearful or believed that they or someone close to them would be harmed or killed. That's not living.
Yeah. Wow.
That's not love either.
Yeah, I was saying that earlier. That ain't love at all.
No, but that's when people don't know what love is, they'll call it that.
Yeah.
So, Lena, we're going to let you come in and be a part of our discussion now. And thank you for being so patient. And welcome to Grown in Dating.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
Okay, well, first, what do you think about this whole Clarence Thomas voting against?
I'm just confused. That's all I'm going to say. I'm confused.
He's confused.
Yeah, and that answer just made me confused. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, why? If you already have, if you're on record
Yeah.
as being abusive and you didn't use a weapon.
Exactly.
So why am I saying here
you're
you go?
encouraging the person to go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, use the weapon. It's fine. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. We can do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, Leana, this is what we're going to do before we go any further. We are going to give you an opportunity to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and about the fabulousness that you have going on in your life right now.
I'm Leana McNeil. I'm a poet, playwright, artist. If you name it, I can do it. I just finished completing one of I had a premiere for a play called Love is Blind, and it touches on domestic violence, and it also touches on the issues that I've experienced personally and those who are close to me experience. We talk about sexual abuse, and we talk about domestic violence, and we are set to do an encore performance on September the 3rd. So you guys come on out. We have we try to take the how heavy it is. We try to add a little bit of humor because it is such a heavy topic, but we also try to give information as well. So yeah.
Can I say something about your play?
Yes, please do.
Okay, first of all, I think every human needs to see the play because of the issues that it talks about. Because when Dee and I were reading those stats, it just once again drives home that this is not somebody else's issue. Mm-hmm. It's an issue for all of us. When you think about a terrorist, someone going in and massacring people and having that type of reputation, it is horrible. And listeners, I know you're calling in, and we're going to call you back in just a moment and get you on the air. We're just going to give her an opportunity to get us started on this topic. I really appreciate you calling in. But it's so frightening that now they're making that connection. And I think most of us logically knew that if you were capable of harming the person who trusts you the most, then you're capable of hurting anyone. So once again, to get back to your play, Leana, I just think that it's very necessary that people see this. I just see it being part of some type of curriculum that is used eventually to empower people and break that cycle.
Yes. Yeah. I agree.
And I want to tell you, V, if you have an opportunity to go, you might need some tissues, though, because I think you're kind of sensitive sometimes.
Hey, I don't mind being sensitive.
It's okay.
I'm not knocking it. I just want you to be prepared so you don't have to use your sleeve.
I feel you. But I got a question.
Yes.
You were saying that the play has part of stuff that you went through in your life.
I've watched my mother be abused. She was abused by my biological father. She was in a relationship with him for 7 years. And I tell people all the time, because especially my mom, she can't believe that I can actually remember we were coming back from the park, and my mom had picked me a flower, and I was smelling it, and getting teary-eyed, the leaf, the part of the petal hit my lip. And when he turned around, he was driving, but when he turned around, it looked to him as if I had the flower in my mouth. So he was driving, and he just reached back and just hit me in my mouth. And I can still remember the taste of blood in my mouth. And I remember my mom like hitting him and telling him, don't you ever put your hand on my child. And when we got back home, I remember my mom getting, oh wow, she got beat horribly. I was also sexually abused multiple times, not only by males but females.
Oh my God!
So it's everything is still kind of fresh for me. So this play actually has been my therapy, and all I can say is I just thank all those who have came out to be a part to help share and, help me share my story and help me release. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Lena. And I know it's like picking at a wound each time because to a certain extent, it is a constant issue that you're going to work on to heal from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Dr. Keya Wiggins is also a part of the discussion tonight, and we want to give her an opportunity to weigh in also. But we're going to take a quick break because we have a couple of callers, and I got to call them back. So I'm sorry, V.
Oh, I was just going to weigh in real quick because what I know about domestic violence is also from my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom also said the exact same thing. She didn't think I remember certain things because I was like maybe 3 or 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But I also remember she got pushed to the point in psychological abuse that this was in Trinidad. They got in an argument right there on the stoop, and my sister was trying to shield my eyes from it. But my mom picked up a rock, and it's the first time I ever saw somebody get knocked out with a rock and falling down because she hit him with the rock. But it was one of those things where she had enough.
Mm-hmm.
So that's had a profound effect on me because it keeps playing like it didn't happen.
It does, yeah.
It keeps playing like it didn't happen, like it was a movie, but it was.
It happened, yeah.
Yeah, when I mentioned it, she was like, "Wow, I can't believe you remember."
Same thing with my mom. When I told her, she was just like, "You really remember that?" I was like, "Yeah, I remember that. I remember a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I remember a lot of the screaming, the yelling, and the thumps and the bangs. But yeah."
Yeah, so that's why I guess you got to be mindful of
Children.
When children are around.
Yeah.
They are affected by what you do.
Yeah.
Because it's still way older now, but it still it still has an emotional effect on.
Of course, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's all my 2 cents about going on there.
Okay. So we'll be right back after this. Oh, wow. Rihanna?
That's what you wanted to play.
Yeah. I'm not knocking it. So, Dr. Wiggins, if you would like to weigh in with us on this topic.
Yeah, okay. So I am also a little late to the conversation, but I've been caught up. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Keya Wiggins. I'm a licensed psychologist. I practice in the Pensacola and surrounding areas. And I'm happy to join today's discussion on domestic violence. I think one of the things that comes up for me in terms of the most asked question is, why do people stay in an abusive relationship? And I think that it's just really hard for people that have no exposure to domestic violence to understand the cycle.
Wiggins, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can we get to that a little later? Because right now we're still talking about like the memories, the childhood memories that they have, because they both said that their parents didn't believe that at 3 and 4 they couldn't remember that. And I think parents hope that you can't remember. Mm-hmm. If you could speak to that, and then we'll get to that a little later in the show.
Yeah, I think that you're both a testament to how powerful domestic violence can be in terms of your memory. And from a clinical perspective, the experiences that you have with your caregivers, whether that be your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle, whoever's responsible for caretaking for you, those are going to be the experiences that have the biggest impact on not only your own personality development, but on how you view the world, how you interact with other people. And so one of the things that comes up that I see frequently is that when people are coming from a household where there was domestic violence, they really struggle with trust in relationships as adults. And in fearing their own judgment in terms of, how this person seemed like a good person, but how will I know that they're not going to change and abuse me in the ways that I saw my mother be abused or my father be abused or, things like that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I got trust issues. I got a lot of trust issues.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely true.
Are you going to make an appointment to see Dr. Keya?
I don't know, because I have trust issues.
I am accepting new patients.
And she might she might just accept you as a client.
I might.
But y'all forget I got trust issues. I'm just playing. But I think talking about it first also helps out a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is something that I do in my practice is I like to have people discuss specific memories. Because there's one thing for it to just be present in your mind and for you to replay it or to try to get away from it whenever, you're triggered. It's nothing to actually sit with someone where you can actually process the memory in a healthy and therapeutic way. If you're talking to your friends about it or if you allow yourself to talk to someone about it, you're probably not processing it in a therapeutic way. So what I do in therapy is I have people actually discuss the memory. We process the feelings that are attached to the memory, not only in the past, but also in the present. So what is it like for you to talk about that now? What are you feeling? So I get people to really confront these specific memories so that they can begin to heal from those experiences.
Since you've shared, V, I'm going to share. My earliest memory was a babysitter's son abusing me. And like being so young and not knowing what was going on, but knowing that I didn't like it. Because he would constantly try to touch me. So as a result, the entire time I was at the babysitter's, I would run. I would just run all over the place. And they were like, she's going to be a track star. She's going to be this. Because nobody was recognizing.
Right.
And of course, I didn't have the vocabulary to say. And so when my grandfather would come and pick me up, he'd be like, baby, why are you so tired? And they were like, she's been running ever since you left. Because after the first couple of times, I recognized that when he was there, I wasn't in a safe environment. So I would tell my grandfather, after this went on for a while, I was like, I could stay home by myself. And I was like 5, like just opting to stay home alone.
Right.
And it was a different time then because I'm a little older than the rest of you. And so they did let me stay home alone.
They did? At 5?
At 5.
Wow.
But like you, Lena, it was, and I don't know if it's because I didn't have the words. Oh God. I didn't have the words that it went on with other people. Because I remember an uncle who threw me up once, and you know how people throw children up and they catch them? Well, when he caught me, he let his hands run alongside my entire body in front of my family, and everybody just laughed and giggled, and I just felt horrible. And at this time I was 6. So it was an early lesson in, a couple of things for me that I felt like I didn't have anybody I could trust other than my grandfather. Family. And if I stayed close to him, even though I wasn't telling him what was going on, I knew if I stayed close to him,
he would protect you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it had happened in front of my grandmother, my mother was there, my aunts, other uncles were there. So who do you trust?
Right. Well, and what this brings up for me, and I see this a lot as well, is if you can't trust your family, then how do you develop trust in other relationships? And so this is where, in my opinion, the healing process comes into play, because a lot of people aren't healing, they're surviving. And so you don't necessarily think about the traumas that you have, or you don't go back and process those traumas. You just go from day to day and just try to make it from day to day. And so it's not uncommon, unfortunately, for families to be in denial whenever there is abuse. So a form of denial is this isn't going to affect them when they're older because they're too young to understand. Or, for some people, I've worked with people whose a parent was aware, had to be aware that the abuse was occurring, whether it be incest or molestation, but didn't do anything about it. And that is incredibly painful to someone's ego. That is incredibly damaging. How can you feel like a person that has worth when your parent allowed you to be abused? And so from my perspective, I view that parent as being in denial. And what that means is that the reality of what's happening is too much for them. And so either consciously or unconsciously, they become unaware. It's like it's not happening. And from their perspective, denial is real. It's not something that in some cases people do it without even consciously understanding what's happening. But it's just the belief that can't be happening, because if it is, it would be too damaging to my ego. And so it's a defense mechanism. Denial is a defense mechanism. It helps to protect your ego. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
That it's amazing what it did for me was a couple of things, and there were other incidents that continued up until my first actual sexual experience
Consensual.
with someone.
Consensual sexual experience or non-consensual?
Non-consensual.
Okay.
My first time was non-consensual.
Okay.
And so I guess when people talk about making connections with people who can make a difference in your life, that's what happened for me. And it's so ironic that I had a friend who became a psychiatrist, friends who were therapists. When I think of it's amazing to me that I sort of feel like they saw something in me. It was like, I need to help her. I need to talk to her. I need to get her to talk it out. The first real relationship I had after that first non-consensual intimate encounter was with an older guy who recognized that my behavior was not normal behavior. And I didn't know that it was, I thought that's what sex was like. I had no point of reference. I grew up with my grandparents, and my grandmother's thing was you keep your legs closed. You stay away from her because she's 14 and she's pregnant. I'm like, what's pregnant? I was that naive.
Yeah.
So by the time I'm like 18 and this happens to me, I don't know what's going on. I just think that's what sex is, and I want no part of it.
I think what that brings up for me is how important it is to begin conversations at a very early age with children, explaining what good touch is and what bad touch is. That this is what stranger danger is. If someone touches you here, that's not okay. That's inappropriate. It's okay to tell me, even if they tell you not to tell me, you're going to be okay. Like to open the line of communication, to be proactive about it instead of waiting for something to happen just in case. Because what you've talked about a lot just in your own story is being very confused, not knowing what's happening and not having anyone to go to talk about it. And so it's important, for parents. And sometimes when parents are survivors of incest, they can do the opposite. They go to the other extreme where they make their child afraid of the world. And so I'm not suggesting that you go to that extreme. I'm just suggesting that you open the conversation so that if something does happen, there's a dialogue that they have, there's a language that they can use, and there's somewhere they can go and talk to.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about I'm speaking from my experiences and the experiences of some friends that I've talked to. Sometimes people don't speak up because they're afraid that it's going to make tear the family apart.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to cause strain within the family.
Right.
So sometimes they don't share this information because they know, well, if I share this information and I say, well, this is what happened, and then it can cause a major explosion within the family. So it's how do you handle that? You have to deal with that.
That is real. Yeah. Like that's a real concern. And I've seen it happen in cases where, let's say that, there was incest, and what do you do as a mother? Because now if your son or your daughter is molesting your son or your daughter, you have to make a choice, right? And so it's the reality that if and when someone does disclose that my uncle has touched me inappropriately or that my brother has touched me inappropriately, the reality is that there will be a ripple effect in the family. And so the last thing you want to do is lie and say, no, that's not the case, because you want to help someone deal with the reality, right? That, you might feel slighted by some of your, just sort of like walking them through the process, normalizing their feelings, and at the end, so as if we're talking about children, they're very egocentric anyways, right? So children just haven't been here long enough to know that people have feelings outside of them and experiences outside of them. And so they're more likely to blame themselves for things that happen in their life. But I can tell you that as an adult, they will have appreciated having that support from their family. So as a child, maybe they won't have the appreciation. They'll blame themselves. They'll struggle with self-esteem. But I can tell you that if it doesn't come out, they'll struggle just as much, if not more. There's no way to avoid a struggle when you're being abused. Does that make sense? And so it's just what path are you going to take? Are you going to suffer in silence, or are you going to say something about it and begin to heal from the process?
So some of the self-medicating that we see people do,
they're suffering in silence. And that is what abuse is about. It is a culture of shame and silence. And and when I see people who come from family systems that hid the abuse, they have no voice. They don't know how to articulate their needs in relationships. They feel like they don't have a strong sense of self. They feel unworthy. And so this is the benefit. This is the I guess some of the drawbacks to not disclosing. Those people that are adults now and that, maybe their mom took their aunt to court or something like that, they actually feel more empowered. So maybe there was a ripple effect. It's like, yeah, the family doesn't talk to us anymore. But as an adult, a lot of times they're able to appreciate that I'm a real person. I had real feelings. These things happened to me and I deserve to have a voice.
I can't speak for either of you, but personally, when I finally told my grandmother and to get no response back.
Right. That's one of the worst. That's one of the worst things that people struggle with.
Kept saying to myself, I wish she would do something.
Right.
Anything.
Right.
Other than tell me to be quiet. And she acted like she didn't believe me. However, as an adult looking back on it, it was clear that she did.
Okay.
Because one of the first things she said was, after she said stop lying, was don't tell your grandfather.
Oh.
So the child didn't hear
don't tell your grandfather.
But the adult, looking back, I remember that really clearly. And so she did believe me.
And I think that would be an example of denial. I don't know who the perpetrator was on you, but it would be this is a good example of how had she accepted that would have been so painful for her that either consciously or subconsciously she chose not to accept it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I would like you to talk about, Keya, if we have a friend or a neighbor or co-worker who's going through something like this and they have not reached out to help, for help, is there something we can do without just, putting their business in the street? Because I think if you call someone your friend, if you see someone who's hurting, because I had a classmate, her mom used to beat her. I mean, she'd come to school. It was evident, you know. And as a child, it's like, I didn't know what to do. I'd share my snack, which was a big deal for me.
Yeah.
I said, it's sweet, so I wanted that snack. But, it's like sometimes she would come, and you could see,
right,
like a wilted flower kind of look.
It just depleted.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the circumstance. So if it's a child, or someone who is unable to care for themselves, or someone that's elderly, we all have a duty to report. If we know that someone that is unable to care for themselves is getting abused, everyone in Florida has a duty to report by law. I especially have a duty to report because I'm a licensed psychologist. So that's what comes up for me when I think about children, elderly people, and people who are unable to care for themselves. You need to report. You just need to make sure that you do your due diligence, because even if nothing happens from the report, you're not a part of the problem. Does that make sense? Because if you're watching this happen and someone else is watching this happen and you're all waiting for someone else to call, then you're just as much responsible as the perpetrator is, because you've done nothing about it. So at least you want to be able to say, I've done something about it, right? Let's say it's a neighbor, though, and this is another adult, and there aren't necessarily any children involved, but you're watching someone, your neighbor, a friend, be abused. A lot of times what happens, the perpetrator will completely isolate them from any friends, family, or, any outside contact. And so what ends up happening then is the survivor, in this case, is totally dependent on the perpetrator for everything. Not just a lot of times financial support, but also for emotional support. Because a lot of times perpetrators are very charismatic and manipulative. And so there will be times where they will be very loving and nice. And then there will be times where they're hateful and mean. And so the person that's involved in the survivor of this is constantly waiting for the clouds to shift and for this person to be nice to them again. And that's what their life is consumed with this other person's mood. And so you don't exist to them. right? And so by just making contact in whatever way that you can, letting them know, I'm here, I see what's happening, and you have a place to go. Giving them resources, because if you know they're completely being controlled, they don't know what resources out there exist for them. They don't know about Favor House, or they don't know about domestic violence, like what to do or where to go. So providing them with those resources, maybe if they say I can't use the phone, well, I'll contact them for you. What do you need from them?
In doing the research, and I'm not trying to monopolize the discussion, guys. Y'all can join in at any time. In doing the research, one of the sites that I went to was the National Domestic Violence website. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was so interesting. They have a little button there that you can push, mm-hmm. so that if someone walks up on you, you mm-hmm. can push that, and you're no longer on that site.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's cool.
That's such a thoughtful thing to do for somebody, because even if you're using the internet, you're still in jeopardy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to be a survivor of any type of abuse is incredibly disempowering. If you can imagine having a life where you have no agency over what you do, how you do it, or when you do it, someone else is in complete control over that. Yeah, it's something that we take for granted, just to pull up your computer and get on the web and surf the web. If you're in a relationship where you're being abused, you don't have that luxury, and so I'm glad they have that feature.
Wow.
So, do you know offhand any sites or any places that people can get any assistance or
Favor House? You mentioned Favor House.
Favor House is one of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we do have the National Domestic Violence Hotline number, 1-800-799-7233. And that is a site that will give you contact information regardless of where you live. V, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just, I was just thinking while y'all were talking about it. I don't have any experience on that part of abuse. Mine was more violent, I guess you could call it. And so I was just interested, what kind of things, for Leana, what kind of things are in your play?
We talk about domestic violence, and then, like I said, I touched on being sexually molested and how it can affect someone as far as maybe habits. Not to give the story away, but just this small segment of the story, she's explaining to her boyfriend who teases her. He likes to mental abuse. He likes to tease her about being overweight. So she's explaining to him that she ate as a way to comfort herself, and the weight that she gained, she figured it would help protect her from being violated. So
that's actually very common with survivors of either childhood sexual abuse or childhood physical abuse, to eat not only as a coping mechanism, but also as a way to kind of to shield themselves from the abuse.
That's my story. That's
very common.
I'm chunky now, because I eat, and it's like I'm trying to stop, but it's like certain things that get me kind of, whether I'm on a high, whether I'm super happy, or whether I'm depressed, I immediately turn to food. And it really is a coping thing for me. That's what it really is. So, but yeah.
I remember thinking that it was going to make him not notice me anymore. Mm-hmm. Because as soon as I started developing breasts, mm-hmm. then he would say things and touch me and touch my behind. And so I would walk around. Now, y'all know how hot it is here in the summertime. Mm-hmm. And it's no different in Alabama. So I would walk around with sweatpants and a sweatshirt on. And we only had AC in one room in the house. Mm-hmm. So there were fans everywhere else. Just to hide myself. Mm-hmm. And then it began, it's like, okay, she's starting to fill up that sweatshirt and those sweatpants, Because in my own mind, it was like, what can I do? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was so interesting to listen to Dr. Wiggins talk about that, because that side of it, I'd heard a little bit of it, but I didn't really become that aware till I heard her say this, because we've had a discussion about this before. And so that sort of drove it home for me that, there's some real common areas, regardless of how the pain has been inflicted on you.
And so the thing that comes up for me is that it's such a culture of secrecy, because you're told don't tell. Mm-hmm. And then if you do tell, a lot of times it's like, that didn't happen to you, stop lying. And so you learn to just stop talking about it. And what that does is it completely isolates you. And you don't realize that the things that you're feeling, the things that you're doing are so common. It's a normal response to the abuse. And so you begin to think that you're unique. There's something uniquely wrong with you, right? And so that's very damaging to your self-esteem. So one of the things that I do is I have a women's group. And one of the primary themes in this group is sexual assault, because 1 in 4 women has that history. And so whenever you get a group of women together, it's likely that someone in that group has that history. And I've been doing this group for the past 10 years or so. I've been doing women's groups. And there hasn't been one group that I've run where I haven't had someone say, you just put my experience into words. And that's such a healing thing when you come from a culture of secrecy and isolation, to have someone else say what you've been feeling, because you thought you were all alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would encourage anyone listening to us once again to call the domestic violence hotline at 800-799-7233. Dr. Keya Wiggins, as she stated earlier, is accepting patients if you're in the Pensacola area. Dr. Wiggins, would you like to give your contact information?
Sure. I can be reached on my website at drkeyawiggins.com. You can also like my Facebook page at Keya Wiggins PhD Psychological Services. And then on my website, you can find my approach to treatment. You can read a little bit about me. If you'd like to schedule an appointment, my number is 850-462-8716.
I have
Sure,
a question.
Absolutely.
If you could kind of help with this whole, I guess, stigma that Black folks feel like they shouldn't talk to a therapist or a psychiatrist, or because it's the moment you mention, I really think I need to talk to someone, or I think I need to see a counselor, the first thing people want to say is, why? They gonna say you crazy. That's gonna be on your record. It's just like, I just noticed this is very prominent in the Black community not to see a therapist.
It totally is, yeah. And actually, one of my specialties is African American mental health, and so the distrust of psychologists is rooted in something that is real within the African American community, where historically we haven't. I'm also African American. That's why I'm saying we haven't always been able to trust medical personnel. So I don't know if you know about the Tuskegee study or, things like that, but there is a long history of distrust between the African American community and what feels like Euro-America, the dominant population, which is the medical field, right? And so some of that is rooted in reality. And then some of it, if you're Black, for whatever reason, you are more likely to be diagnosed, you're more likely to go to jail, you're more likely to be on certain types of meds, things like that. And so I want to first say that the fear is based in reality. It's not some fear that just, it's not an irrational fear. But I think that as a field, we have progressed to the point where it is no longer acceptable to diagnose the African American population or to pathologize the African American population with things because they don't match up with the dominant population in some way. So, for instance, sometimes our family systems look very different. African American family system might look very different from a Euro American family system, but it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the African American family system. It just means that we function in a different way. And so I think that, the first thing that I would say is that we've come a long way. And the second thing that I'd say is that, convincing people that you don't have to be crazy to come to therapy is half the battle for me, especially if it's very rare that I have an African-American client come in and say, listen, I'm not crazy. And so what I would say is do it for yourself and not your family. Because number one, the distrust is real. And so they may not be in a place where, they don't know how you're suffering. You're sitting in your suffering 24/7. They don't know how much you're suffering. So sometimes if you're waiting for their approval, you're just not going to get it. And so what you need to do is to do what you need to do to be okay. Even if it means that you're going against the grain of what your family would suggest or what your friends would suggest. Maybe they're not going to go to therapy, but you know that you're struggling and you don't know what you're doing and you don't want to feel this way every day. So you're going to go to therapy. So what I would say is empower yourself and do what you need to do to heal, to be okay, as opposed to waiting for the approval of others. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Are there some things that someone who has experienced abuse, whether it was as a child or as an adult, can do right now other than seeing a therapist that would be beneficial to them where they are right now, even if they feel like they can't get out of that situation?
Okay. So if they're in a situation where they are currently being abused.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that it's important to know that there is a way out, that a lot of times the script that an abuser or perpetrator will tell you is that you're unworthy, no one wants you, you're never going to be anything without me. And so it just completely destroys a person's sense of self. And so what I would say to a person who's in that situation is that there is help for you. There are people who have been where you are, even though that may not make sense to you because you're so isolated. You think that you're the only one that's going through this. That is not true, that you are not alone, that there are resources out there for you. There are people out there that want to help you, and you're worthy of that help.
I just been thinking about the whole time y'all been talking, and the question kind of came into my head. Have you found that people who have been abused turn around and abuse others as well, kind of in the same way?
I think that, a lot of times if you go back into a perpetrator's history, you probably will find that there is some abuse or neglect or things like that in their history, but it's not necessarily a prerequisite. It doesn't mean that, there are people that come from very abusive households that are not perpetrators of abuse, right, that would never abuse their children or, their families in the way that they've been abused. And so I think that there is a connection or a correlation, but it's not necessarily a prerequisite for someone to have come from that setting to then be a perpetrator.
Yeah, I was just thinking because, there's some, I guess some movies that I've seen that they kind of do like a backstory.
Yeah.
And it shows their abuse. Mm-hmm. And so they turn around and might be doing some things in a certain way, but I don't know if that was real or not.
What I will tell you is that a lot of times with abusers, they are incredibly insecure. These are people that are so insecure, and this is sometimes what grabs the person in the beginning of the relationship because, in the beginning of the relationship, they're going to be very fixated on who you are, getting to know you, making time for you. And part of that is it's in their own insecurity. They don't have a sense of self. And so in the beginning, you might be thinking, oh my God, this guy is so into me. And, he wants to know everything about me and, is rearranging his schedule to spend time with me. Not to say that there aren't people out there that do that for good reasons, right? Okay. But sometimes this is what the person is waiting for. When you ask them, why are you still in the relationship? Well, he was so good when we first got together. It's because he had no sense of self and he was insecure. And so it starts there, but then it escalates into control. And it can be something really small, like you're going out in that. Like, is that what you're wearing? Mm-hmm. And it can escalate to then, choosing your clothes. And so you might think, oh, he's paying all his attention to me. He wants to shop with me. Does he want to shop with you or does he want to control you? Mm-hmm. And so then it might escalate to verbal abuse and then it just continues to escalate. And for someone on the outside looking in, you can see these little nuanced changes. But for someone that's in it, you don't know because you're just in the relationship. You're not evaluating the relationship as it goes. So you don't realize until you're getting hit, oh my God, this is where it started.
That issue of control. It seems like it is, whether it's verbal abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, it always comes back control. Is that an accurate assumption?
Yeah, and so this is kind of what I was getting to when I said that the perpetrator is incredibly insecure. So anyone that needs to control someone else is very insecure in terms of their own self-concept. They don't feel like a real person themselves unless they're controlling someone else. So they get power from having control over you, in other words. And so, yeah, there is more than likely always going to be an element of control in domestic violence or when people are perpetrating against other people.
Now, once before I was having a conversation with someone about this, and they kept saying that they felt like if you're being verbally abused, it was going to definitely lead to physical abuse. Is that an accurate statement?
Not necessarily. Everyone that is capable of verbally abusing you doesn't necessarily mean they're capable of physically abusing you. But there are red flags to look for. So if someone starts, like I said, with those little controlling behaviors, and they start to verbally abuse you, and then they start to, the anger starts to escalate, they start to throw things or hit things around you, in that case, you want to get out before it actually does get physical. But, even if you're being verbally abused, especially for children, sometimes that's worse than physical abuse.
Oh, absolutely.
In terms of your self-esteem and the way you view yourself. So either one is not indicative of a healthy dynamic, and it's not going to be good for you.
We've talked about abuse in different forms, and I think that this discussion is very timely. Before you arrived, we were talking about the Supreme Court's decision and how Justice Clarence Thomas was sort of arguing for the right for people who have been abusive to still have accessibility to guns. And so I'm thinking that how misguided is that? He has to have, at the very least, the same information that I can pull up. So I don't understand why he would think that's a good idea to... Well, before I get to that, we also talked about it's been like 10 years since he's even opened his mouth as a justice during a discussion. So for him to choose to do that, I'm like, why is he falling on that side? I know you don't have an answer for that. But part of this goes back to the massacre in Orlando and finding out that he was guilty of domestic abuse. And I want to say they said there was something like 40% of mass shootings included a prior history of domestic abuse. And as we were saying, that if I don't have regard for that intimate partner, then I don't have regard for anyone else.
Yeah, I think that it just speaks to a pattern of behavior that you observe from someone who is capable of going to that extreme. And so you a lot of times this research, it has to be done after the fact, because you can't interview a mass shooter before, right? And so you collect a lot of this data after the fact. And so you have to keep that in mind. They're looking at factors that link all of these people together, but they're not necessarily predictive. Right. So this is like correlational data. Right. So you can't make a causal inference, right? But you can say that it speaks to a certain pattern of behavior that, if you have someone that is, committing a crime as heinous as, what happened in Orlando, you look back on his history, you would expect to find that there would be some history of violence, some history of anger outbursts or whatever, because someone that is capable of doing something like that hasn't been in healthy relationships, doing things that people that don't do that would do,
Okay. I think we're going to take a little break right now, and we'll come back.
Okay, we're going to play some music. I know I haven't really said much, but I've been really listening to it. So we're going to play some Babyface, and we'll be back in a moment.
This is Grown and Dating with TJ and V on Real Women Radio.
All right. Now, I got a couple questions from Miss Leana. your play is talking about a lot of, discusses abuse. Do you have different characters with different abusive traits?
Yes, I have. The character Joshan, he is very, I would say, verbally abusive and mentally abusive. He likes to. He's a charmer, I guess you can say. He knows what to say and how to say it. But the character Seven is kind of catching on, and she's like, "No, I got you." But Frederick, he's kind of up and down. Up and down. One minute he's actually really nice, and then the next minute he just kind of flips out. Sarah, the character Sarah, is his wife. She's trying to learn how to deal with it. I guess you could say she's in the public eye. She has it all together, but behind closed doors, I don't know how to put it, but behind closed doors, she's dealing with a lot. Dealing with Frederick, dealing with his emotional ups and downs. But when
that's
she's
real
questioned
life right
about
there.
it, yeah, when she's questioned about it, she's like, "No, we're fine. What are you talking about? Mind your own business," But there's one particular character. His name is Renard. He's like, something's not right. I don't know you that well, but I know there's something about you that's not quite right. So, but yeah, I don't know if that helped out at all.
Oh, yes. So, I could ask Dr. Wiggins now. Mm-hmm. Are those characters common?
I say so. I think that, she sort of spoke to, mention the relationship where the person is kind of controlling. Can you hear me? So things like that. So that kind of reflects back on what I was saying before in terms of some of the red flags or some of the signs. There are different types of abuse. There is verbal abuse, there's physical abuse, and I'm glad that your play encompasses more than just physical abuse because, Tanya, I think you asked, if does verbal abuse always lead to physical abuse? And my answer to that is that they're both bad. And so both of them are damaging to your self-esteem. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I think that a relationship with no abuse is the best way to go.
Right. Yeah, I just thought it was interesting. Like I was sharing in the break that my mother, I guess the way she was abused made her into a control freak. She had to feel like she had to control everything.
Yeah.
And that kind of felt like, as a child, kind of an abuse for me until I could understand where it came from.
Mm-hmm. So that's kind of one of the things that comes up for me is that's the difference between a child's brain and an adult's brain, right? A lot of times, and this is getting off track, but when you're abused and you don't go to therapy, no one's allowing you to talk about it, everything gets stuck in your child's brain and your understanding of it from that perspective. And I mentioned that children are very egocentric, right? It's just part of development. Like they just you already blame yourself for everything. And so if you've been abused, you've never been able to talk about it, it's likely that you blame yourself. You could be 25, you're still going to blame yourself for that abuse at 8 years old. And so sometimes coming to therapy allows you to differentiate between your child's brain, process it, and really get it from your 25-year-old brain. Now you really understand it. So for you, it's like you probably felt kind of oppressed, being in a situation where you felt controlled. And at the time, it's like you don't know why your mom is doing that. You're not able to connect the dots because you're inside of yourself too much. You can't see what's happening outside of yourself. But as an adult, you can say, okay, I see it. She was in an abusive situation. Maybe she was overcompensating because she had, sacrificed so much or had been through so much abuse and had lived a lot of her life without having control or agency over her own body, maybe even at times. And so you became the object of her control, or your siblings became the object of her control because she needed to regain that control over her life. It's one thing to understand that as an adult. It's another thing to feel traumatized and not understand it as a child. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, that was real deep for me.
Also being overprotective.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like I'll admit that, and sometimes my husband have to tell me, "Hey, chill, they'll be all right." Being overprotective because you've because when you deal with so much and
Right.
you don't want your child to have to deal with
Right.
the same thing that you're dealing with, because you know, well, speaking from my standpoint, everything that I dealt with, I'm like, I'm not gonna have my sons
Right.
go through it.
Right.
So it's like it's taking everything within me just to let them be normal and let them go outside and play and
Right.
let them hang out with
Right.
this kid, let them hang out with that kid.
Right. And so I think what comes up for me is like, I don't mean to sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but this is where therapy comes into play, because those are your issues. And if you don't take care of them, then you will project your issues onto your children. That's
Yeah.
what your mom did, right?
Yeah.
It's like you don't know any other way to be. And the fear is real. You know, it's like you can't just shake it off, because it always exists inside of you. And so you need to do something with it. And so having a place to talk and process that so it doesn't impact your children's lives, I think is really important, because you want to have a balance. So you want to definitely make sure that your children are safe, and make sure that they know everything about stranger danger, you know, wrong touch, right touch, like those types of things. But you don't want to make them afraid of the world. You don't want to create anxious people who don't trust anyone, right? And so I think that it's, you know, I'm not a parent, but I know, and I sort of sympathize with how difficult sometimes it can be to be a parent, because you have this person that you are responsible for, right? And so you're responsible for making them productive and effective members of society, and someone that's a well-functioning person. And that's a huge job. And so if you haven't taken care of your own stuff, it's hard to be good on the job.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I got my husband there.
Yeah.
I keep telling myself, I'm like, I need to talk to somebody, just let it out. Because since I've started writing the play,
That can be really therapeutic.
It has been, and everybody who's been working with me, they're like, man, you're a crying bucket. All you do is cry. And I'm
You're
like,
getting it out.
And that's exactly what I'm telling them. I'm like, I'm getting it out.
Good.
Like, because I'm actually sharing.
Right.
This is the most I've ever shared my experience
Right.
since this play has been out, because people are asking, you know, what is the background? Where does this come from? And I'm telling them that there's some truth in it, you know, and then when they ask that question, well, what part is true to your life? That's when it's like all the tears get to come.
Now you're
in.
working
So-
through it.
Exactly.
Good.
So, but I have the play, and I have my husband, because my
Good.
husband is there saying, look, you know, you have to allow the boys to breathe a little bit. Let them do something outside.
Let them
of being
mess
around
up a little
mommy.
bit. Yeah.
So yeah.
Good.
Yeah, because I know therapy for me is I'm a songwriter, and so I used to write a whole bunch of stuff, because you know, when I was younger, I felt like I was really stressed out.
Yeah.
Like at 13, what am I doing reading the Irma Bombay books? You know what I mean? And I was really reading the Irma Bombay books, trying to figure out, and reading psych books, trying to figure myself out at 13.
Yeah.
You know, because of what I was going through. And I've actually been to counseling.
Have you? Good.
I've actually seen a therapist. That's the only reason why I have this perspective
Right.
now. Or else
It helps you. It really does help you to step outside of yourself for a minute and to understand that it's not just about you. There's a system that exists outside of you.
Right.
And in therapy, it's almost like, come with me. Let me help you understand the system, and let's help you to heal through this process. So I'm glad you did that.
Yeah, I think therapy helped me a lot, actually, to actually understand and just have a forgiveness. Because once you let that go, my mom might not even have been thinking about it on that level.
No, absolutely
of
not.
how it's been affecting me.
Yeah.
But I've been holding on to it so long. But since I've gone through it, and I've actually had to get outside of myself and look at the situation from on a larger scale, then I was able to understand some things. So yeah,
Good.
it's been good.
Dr. Wiggins, and I'm sorry, V. I wanted to ask you the question while we're on air about that. Well, I don't know if it's a wives' tale or if it's true that you sort of send out once you've been abused. It's easy to be abused again. So if you could talk about that phenomenon for us.
Right. And so I mentioned before that I've been doing women's groups for a while, and large components of these groups is sexual assault, because like I mentioned before, 1 in 4 women has this history. And so a theme is usually not being able to recognize danger. And so I mentioned before that when you are a survivor of some type of abuse, whether it be sexual abuse, physical abuse, you have a higher tolerance for what would be considered very uncomfortable and maybe even, I guess, creepy behavior. Your signal gets lost, And so for someone that, I'll give you an example, for someone that has never had a history of abuse, they might have someone walking up to their car and in a way that is alarming to them, right? Someone that just looks out of place, and fear might come up in the person that's never been abused. And that fear lets them know there's something that's not right about the situation. Get in your car, If you've been abused, you almost become desensitized to that fear. There's a book called The Gift of Fear. And so, it is sometimes a gift because it lets you know something's not right about the situation. And so if you have a history of abuse, you might have the same person walking up to your car in the same way, but you don't have those alarms going off because you're so desensitized to, being abused, right? And so, you may not see the warning signs in the same way. So this is why sometimes people that are survivors of domestic violence find themselves in one relationship after another with these same themes, because they're so desensitized to the natural cues that you get when you're in danger.
Thanks for sharing that with us. And once again, I know we did it earlier, but if you'd like to be a part of our discussion, please feel free to call or text us at 850-332-3303. You can reach us on Facebook at Grown and Dating. And we are also, we're also available. What's that other number, V?
Let me look.
I apologize. I caught you off guard with that, didn't I? Okay, so I don't see that other number. So if you want to call or text us, please reach out to us at 850-332-3303 or reach out to us at Grown and Dating on Facebook, and we will take your message. If you want to send us a private message on Facebook, we'll accept that too, because we know that everybody's at different places in your life. And right now, somebody could be in the middle of a domestic or intimate partner abuse situation, and we don't want you to put yourself in jeopardy. But we would love to have your input in the discussion.
Okay, Leana.
Yes, sir.
Where is your play going to be? So people who are interested in seeing
And when?
it, where and when? Of course.
It's going to go down September the 3rd at 6 o'clock at the Woodland Heights Community Center. That's 111 Berkeley Drive, Pensacola, Florida, 32504.
And the cost?
The tickets are $10, but if you go online to our website, you get $2 off. So instead of it being 10, it's only going to be 8. And the web address is posicaleentertain.wix.com. What's that backslash? What's that thing that the backslash or forward slash poetic phrase? That's POETICPHRAZE. Again, that's Posical, POETICALENTERTAIN.wix.com/poetic phrase. That's POETICPHRAZE. And get your tickets offline, and instead of it being 10, it's only going to be 8. So yeah.
And so we're going to ask her to also go to our Facebook page and post that information there. And that second number, if you would like to Skype in and join the conversation, is 850-417-8560. That's 850-417-8560.
All right. Dr. Wiggins, could you also give your information as well? Because I know
Sure.
there are people that will probably want to have some specific questions for you that they probably wouldn't do on the air.
Right. So you can like my Facebook page. It is Keya Wiggins PhD. Psychological Services, and I spell my first name Keya. You can also go on my website to look at my practice, my approach to treatment, to learn about scheduling an appointment, fees, those types of things. My website is DrKeyaWiggins. That's drKeyaWiggins.com. And then also you can give me a call if you want to schedule an appointment. My number is 850-462-8716.
Dr. Wiggins, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Let's say I want to come and see you, and I'm not in that dangerous situation anymore, but I've still got those images, that pain, the remnants of that abuse still lingering with me. I have not done anything so that I can do so that I can start healing. And maybe I've been self-medicating in some way or another. What can I expect from that initial visit?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so I sort of outline my approach to treatment on my website, but the first piece of treatment is really us just getting to know each other. I know that just coming into therapy can be incredibly difficult for people. Like, I'll have people come in and tell me that, they have been looked at my website 10 times before they made the first phone call, and they picked up the phone, but they didn't dial the number. And so the first couple of sessions is really just me getting to understand the person that I'm working with in their cultural context. And so in the beginning of therapy, I ask questions that may seem kind of strange to people, because I ask them about their family culture. I ask them about the culture of communication. I ask them about the culture of affection. For me, it's important to understand them in context, but it's more important for them, the client, to begin to understand themselves in context. So before we even really get to the meat of the problem, the first thing is going to be, I need you to leave here making sense to yourself. And so the first couple of sessions are just, let's start a foundation, because this is the framework that we're going to use for every problem that comes up after this session. We're going to really start to understand why you interacted with the world in the way that you did, why you responded in this way, so that you're no longer making sense of it from a framework that's damaging to your self-esteem. So a lot of people will make sense of things that have happened in their lives by saying there's something inherently wrong with me, when there's another explanation that exists if we're just able to really get down to things, looking at it from a different lens. So the first piece is, let's just get to know you.
Thank you for that. I also, I'm sorry I did it again. Okay, so what if you have a child who has witnessed, because they are telling us that they have those early memories.
Yeah.
Well, let me do it this way, because you did say before you had a specific age that you start at, right?
Yes, I do work with adults.
Okay.
And so 18 and up is usually who I work with. I will make some exceptions, but I don't have specialized training to work with children. And so,
if it's the child in me that witnessed that abuse, and I'm still carrying it around, because you said one of the consequences is a lack of trust. And as a healthy, functioning adult, you need to be able to trust someone.
Absolutely,
so what can you do to help me in that regard? Or maybe to get someone who's on the fence, should I reach out to someone? Because, of course, we would love for the business to come to you, but everybody's not going to be able to get to you.
Right.
So what's that first step they need to take? Because you're driving people to your website, which we love, but we have listeners all over.
Okay.
So what's something that you would suggest to them?
Well, one of the things that I'm going to suggest is very simple, and it's to engage in the process of introspection. So that's kind of what you were saying that you're doing with this play. You're allowing yourself to go back and reflect on experiences that you've had, on your history, the way that it's affected you. And I mentioned before that most people aren't healing, they're surviving. And so there's a difference between getting up every day, going to work, taking care of your kids, eating dinner, and then going to bed and then doing the same thing the next day, and taking time out for yourself where you're journaling, reflecting, really getting inside of yourself instead of externalizing, instead of watching what's happening around you, what's happening inside of you, like really beginning to reflect and introspect. I think that helps you to begin to sort of understand, again, how you're interacting with the world, why you've learned to interact with the world in this way, and you're less likely to have an explanation that's damaging to your self-esteem when you do that. So self-reflection.
I like that. Now, I have two questions.
Okay.
The first one is, what can the abuser do if they recognize that, hey, that's me?
Right.
And because I'm assuming that some of them are not aware. I had a young lady tell me, well, that's just how I talk to my man.
Yeah. And she doesn't realize that she's being abusive.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, change is incredibly hard. If you think about, if you just try to change a habit that you have, whether it be, smoking, biting your nails, whatever, there's research to say that it takes anywhere from 60 to 120 days of doing the same thing for it to actually change the habit. And so,
wait a minute. So that 21 days they've been telling us.
Yeah.
That's false.
No, it's varied.
Thank you, because that makes me feel so much better.
It takes
60 to 120. It really depends on the person. Yeah, you have to do the same thing every day. And so if you're thinking about like...
You set somebody free just then. Because that 21 days has been out there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The research is, so if you think about like, when I am abusive, when I'm perpetrating abuse, this is an interpersonal behavior pattern that is ingrained in who I am. Right. Okay. And so, a lot of times this is why I'll give you a context, an example. If I'm working with a couple and let's say that one of the people in the couple is unfaithful, right? And it's really hard to change. Right. And so, we're working in therapy and they change temporarily, but then they cheat again. Because that's what they do. That's what feels natural to them. So if you're a perpetrator of violence, then it's going to be really hard to change. Not say it's impossible, but it's incredibly difficult because it's just your natural go-to. So it could be that, you're good for a month and then you start to perpetrate again. And so I would really, not just with me, I would really encourage someone who is struggling with perpetrating either verbally or physical abuse onto someone else to go to therapy, to meet with someone so that you can really understand, what is this pattern about for you? What are you feeling in this relationship? What is it about your sort of insecurities or the things that have happened in your life that have caused you to interact with the world in this way? Because I think that's the way that you're going to get lasting change. You have to have insight. Like if you think about, if you have a medical problem, like a stomach ache or a headache, and this is your symptom, and you go to a doctor, the doctor can say, here's a pill for your symptom. But unless they're addressing the underlying cause, you're going to continue to have that symptom in the future.
Right.
A behavior that you're trying to change is the same way. It's like, I can give you coping mechanisms to manage your depression or your anxiety. I can give you worksheets that say this is how you don't perpetrate against your partner. But unless we're addressing the underlying causes, I'm just putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. We're not really doing anything here.
So I just got a text from someone who wants to know, have you ever seen a case where the abuser wakes up, realizes, because I think the very nature of it is they're probably like, this is who I am, this is what I do. So I imagine it's kind of hard to get to that self-reflection as an abuser.
I don't want to say, I would never say never.
Of course.
But my concern is waiting for someone, to have that moment where they're going to wake up. Like if you're someone that's in a relationship where you are being perpetrated against in some way, I would encourage you not to wait for the person to change. Not to say that person can't change, but if nothing changes about the dynamic of your relationship, it's unlikely that they're going to change. Does that make sense?
I have a neighbor who, her husband had a stroke and became paralyzed. That was the only thing that stopped him, because I remember this man was like 60.
Yeah.
And there would still be the screams and stuff coming from their
Yeah.
home.
So once the norms are established in any group, whether it be a family or relationship, they're pretty much set in stone. It's really hard for people to just all of a sudden begin to behave differently. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that you come from a family that doesn't talk about your feelings. That's the norm, right? What would it be like if you just went into a family reunion and started talking about your feelings? People are going to be like, what are you doing? Right?
They're asking if I'm drinking.
Yeah, like what's wrong with you? We don't do that. Same things in relationships. So when the norm is violence, it's unlikely that with no shift, no dramatic change in the relationship, that one day this person will stop treating you that way. That's very, very unlikely.
Okay. I want to say, Dr. Wiggins and Leana, that we have given, first of all, we're Real Women Radio.
Right.
So we've given a lot of attention on this issue as the woman being the one who's controlled, who's abused,
Right.
who's victimized. But the reality is when we look at the stats, 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. 1 in 4 men have been victims of some form of physical violence. So, you go from severe to just any kind of form. And I think and then 1 in 18 men have been stalked by an intimate partner. So I would like you to address that, because I know that this isn't just a woman as the victim.
Yeah.
So if you could speak to us a little bit.
And I think that this is a population that often gets overlooked. I mean, I, as a psychologist, I don't know that it may exist, but I haven't heard of as many groups for battered men as I have for battered women. And there is some reason for that, because 97% of survivors of domestic violence are women.
Right.
And so there's a reason why we have those resources out there. But I think that this is a population that often gets overlooked, not only by the community at large, but also by their peers. So, if you're a man and you're in a relationship where you're being abused, you may not feel safe telling your friends that you're being abused, because that makes you look weak, And so for them, I think that it's hard for them to have a place to go.
Yeah, like I was telling a story about a friend of mine. We didn't know he was getting abused.
Yeah.
And it kind of came on accident.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, we were on a conference call. And he came in on a conference call. And we were talking. All of a sudden, we heard screaming in the background and a whole bunch of commotion. And he was literally getting beat up while he was on the phone by his wife. Because his wife was, he's a little guy and his wife was a little bigger than him. But, that's not an excuse. But, it shocked us, because it was 8 guys on the line. And he had to hang up, like, I got to call y'all back.
Yeah, that's really sad. And I think a lot of times with guys, like, you're more likely to laugh that off. Whereas if the case were reversed and it was a woman and, her husband was behaving that way, everyone would immediately be alarmed. I think that makes it difficult for men to know where to go, how to get support, how to get help. But honestly, men can struggle with self-esteem just as much as women do. It's not a female issue. It's something that affects everybody.
I have a question real quick. She had made the comment about the young lady saying, well, that's just how I talk to him.
Yeah.
Don't you feel, I'm asking your opinion.
Yeah.
Do you feel like maybe some women feel like they can do it because it's overlooked? So they figure, I can put my hands on him, ain't nothing gonna happen, because even if the man were to call the police, she can immediately say, well, he hit me, and then all of a sudden they jump on the woman's side. Do you think
the laws have changed though with that, Leana? Go on. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just saying, like, they are changing. I agree. I'm saying, like, do you feel like maybe a lot of women feel like, I can do it because I already know what's going to happen, or maybe they have kids and they know, at the end of the day they're going to take my side. Do you think that gives them that permission?
What I'll take it even further back. I think that what gives women sometimes a little bit of leeway is the difference in how men and women are socialized. And we think about, specifically within the African American community, but this is true in other communities as well. We don't allow little boys to express themselves as much. We don't allow little boys to cry. We don't allow little boys to show any vulnerability. And so what ends up happening then is you begin to have these expectations that men don't cry, men don't express themselves, men don't have feelings. And so sometimes when you're in a relationship then, and, if you're someone who is a perpetrator of, verbal abuse or physical abuse, and we'll use the male-female scenario. So you're a woman who's with a man who's been socialized to never express himself. That might give you a little bit of leeway to, well, I'm going to overexpress. I'm going to, be the one that is in control in this situation, and I'm going to take away your power, And if you express any feeling or anything like that, I will, target that as a weakness in you. I'll really question your manhood.
It was funny. I think culturally, like me being Caribbean. My uncles and my male family members kind of raised me not to feel anything.
Right. Now, what I would challenge that they didn't raise you not to feel anything because you're still human.
Right.
They raised you not to acknowledge your feelings. Yeah, because it's human nature to have feelings.
Yes. So I'm pretty sure they'd be in shock. Like, you went to therapy for what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if something hurt, you shrug it off.
Right.
Whatever it was, if it was physical or emotional or whatever, that's just how we do it.
Yeah, and that kind of speaks to my second phase of treatment, because the second phase of treatment is emotion focused. And so what that means is that a lot of people are completely disconnected from their emotional experience. And when that happens, you don't feel like a real person. You're just kind of like this empty shell walking around. And so what I do in therapy is get people to begin making contact with their emotional experience. And when they come from a culture like yours where, you were taught not to express yourself, sometimes when I ask them, how are you feeling? It's like asking them to speak another language. They don't even know. They can't even identify. Sometimes I have to give them a feeling chart. Like, these are feeling words. I have to tell them feelings are one word. So when I ask you how you feel, it's not a long, drawn out explanation, because that could be a defense mechanism coming up. I just want to know, how do you feel in this moment? Sad, mad, upset, depressed, angry with me, for trying to pull feelings out of you. Anything. A lot of times it starts with frustration. I'm frustrated with you. It's like, yes, great. It's a feeling. Finally, thank you.
Yeah. I like that you shared that, because it made me think of seeing a couple of my young cousins. Like, I want to say he was 5 and she was 7. And she went over and took his toy away from him. And he said, "You really hurt my feelings just then." And I was so proud of them. And she said, "I'm sorry." And she went and gave it back to them, and then they hugged. And I was like, that's some parenting going on right there.
Right.
And an evolution.
Yeah.
I can't even wrap my mind around nothing like that.
Yeah. Being able to say,
they blew
really
me away.
Yeah.
I can't even wrap my mind around it. Like, why would you say that?
Yeah.
But that's just because.
Well, see, I know when I was married, I would tell my ex, "I'm so angry right now." But he came from a place where they demonstrated and, like all over the place. And so when I would tell him, he took it as a joke, and I'm like, I'm serious,
It's because you weren't demonstrative enough.
Yeah.
I think that speaks to, like, when two different cultures come together, if you haven't had conversations about, like, this is the culture that I come from, this is how we're different, then you just have this automatic expectation that you're going to behave the same way that I behave. It's really hard for people to really understand something from someone else's perspective. That's one of the hardest things for people to do. Get outside of yourself. And that's why psychologists, and one of the reasons why we have to go through so much training, because that's part of my job, is to get outside of my own self and to understand things from your perspective. It's really hard.
We appreciate both of you joining us today, this evening, and participating in our conversation. V, do you have a final thought you'd like to share?
I mean, this was therapeutic for me, actually. I kind of appreciate it. I definitely got to check out the play, and from what you shared, it kind of helped me as well. And Dr. Wiggins and your insights, so all that was like really good for me, and hopefully other people hearing it can have drawn something. That they can take and put on their heart and learn from and grow from. Yeah. One last time, I definitely want y'all to let the people know contact information before anything.
Excuse me.
And you don't have to say the whole email.
I'm not going to do that this go around. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can go and check it out on our Facebook page, because she's going to post it there.
Yes.
Dr. Wiggins is also going to post her information, but we're going to give them an opportunity to talk about when the play is, how they can reach you, all that stuff.
The play is coming out, like I said, September the 3rd at 6 p.m. at the Woodland Heights Community Center. That's going to be at 111 Berkeley Drive, Pensacola, Florida, 32504. And what else?
Ticket price?
Oh, ticket price is $10. Ticket price is $10. But if you order them online, you get $2 off. So, yes.
And check out the Grown and Dating Facebook page for that information.
Yes.
She'll lead you back to all of that.
Okay, and you can like my Facebook page at Keya Wiggins, PhD Psychological Services. You can also go to my website. It's DRKEYAWIGGINS.com. If you'd like to make an appointment, give me a call at 850-462-8716.
If you need more information on domestic violence or need to get out of a domestic violence situation, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-799-7233. V, what's our topic next week?
Wow, what is our topic next week? Grooming. Putting some respect on it, if y'all know that term.
That's not an ing.
Oh, put some respect on it? I'm sorry.
Put some respect on it.
My mom was an English teacher, so I kind of put things in where it's supposed to.
Is that how he talks?
That is not how he talks.
Okay.
But I kind of hear my mom in my head right now. She corrects my text messages.
Well, she should.
Really?
Yeah, she'll say, well, that was improper.
But this ain't for mom right now. So
This
what's
ain't
our
for
topic
mom.
next week?
Grooming, put some respect on it.
Okay.
That's right. All right, this is V.
This is TJ, and we thank you for joining us this evening on Grown and Dating.